Hello, Kevin. We're back.
Hello, Donovan. Brief technical interlude there. I'm hoping we've managed to bring, a handful of people with us. I know we've played hide the live stream now. We've changed links and things, so I think that's a problem. But yes, so that was just a Wi-Fi dropout, was it, Donovan? Wi-Fi crash.
Yep, absolutely nothing. Lost it all.
So you've dragged a cable across now.
I have a cable.
So he's got the cable dragged across. Right. If there is anybody there watching, I'm not sure there will be. Obviously, this will be recorded anyway, so we'll put this up on YouTube. So we'll carry on with the session, and everybody who didn't get it this time around can watch it on playback anyway. So we'll carry on with the session, but hopefully we've got it sorted. If anybody is out there in YouTube land, please feel free to type some comments into the chat bar so we can see you and get your comments and your questions, and we'll carry on through. So I think we'd had a bit of a preamble before and a bit of a chat before the crash, and we were just about to kick off. So where are we going to start off, Donovan? What's the first area we're going to look at? What's the first question?
We're going to start off with the Prime Test 50 and what is a PAT checker?
Ah, right, yeah. This is always a good one. This is one that people struggling with. Oh, good to see Nathan's arrived. Actually, Nathan's arrived in the chat window there. I can see. So he's got to fill his cuppa up now because he's gone through it while he was waiting for us, and he needs another one. I think we need something stronger than a cup of tea at the moment.
Definitely.
Yeah. So PAT checkers. This is always something that people really misjudge PAT checkers. They misunderstand. They don't really get them. People generally tend to think as a PAT checker, and what we mean when we talk about a PAT checker is basically a PAT tester like our Seaward Prime Test 50 that actually gives a ticker across indication, thumb up, thumb down, red light, green light type thing. People tend to look at it as like a poor man's PAT tester, like a cheap PAT tester, because they are the entry level testers. They're entry level into our range. And they are really, cost effective. Sort of talking about the £200-ish mark. So really, from that side of things, they are seen as the sort of entry-level PAT testers, and sometimes they're looked down on by people who do PAT testing and say, "Oh, it's not a proper PAT tester. It hasn't got the values. It doesn't give you the reading in ohms or mega ohms." So from that side of things, it's seen as, like I say, a poor man's PAT tester, which is totally wrong. Something like the Seaward Prime Test 50 is a full-blown PAT tester. Now, there's a lot of manufacturers out there who can't say that with their PAT checkers. They've just got a couple of LEDs, and it doesn't really, you don't know, is it a pass, is it a fail? Whereas with the Seaward ones, with the Prime Test 50, it is a full-blown PAT tester. I mean, it is actually doing, it's built to the same standards as our PAT testers. It's doing a proper PAT test. Whereas some, like I say, some other products that are on the market, you can't say that. Whereas where do these things fit in? Where do they fit in? And they do generally tend to be something that people do get as a an entry into the market. But actually, the purpose for a PAT checker is generally for what we refer to as enhanced visual inspections. So if somebody's doing a visual inspection and they want to go that little bit extra, because as we always say, with PAT testing, when you're doing a visual inspection, you can't see resistance. You can't see the resistance of the cables. You can't see the resistance of the insulation. So the bit that's missing really is the bit you need the tester for. If you've got an IEC lead, what about the polarity? Is it wired up correctly? Now, a lot of these with molded leads, you can't take them apart to do that. So where the PAT checker fits in and where our Prime Test 50 fits in really well is actually for enhancing what you're doing when you're doing a user check. So you do a user check, visual inspection, look all over it. But for the bits you can't see, you can use something like a Prime Test 50. It's absolutely perfect for that. Because it's easy. It's a go, no-go indication. It's got a ticker across on the screen for pass, fail. It's quite easy for lower skilled people who aren't electrically trained, to be able to actually use it in that way. And actually in the HSE guide to PAT test, the HSE guidance, HSG 107, they actually include in there level 1 and level 2, levels of competence. And they actually mention in there under level 1 competence that people with basic training using a standard go, no go prime test 50 style tester. So it is actually covered under the health and safety executive guidance, actually using that type of product. Now, the other thing people use them for is to supplement PAT testing. So they might be doing PAT testing, maybe using one of our Apollo testers, maybe every 12 months or something like that. But what about new equipment that enters the workplace? So they get new equipment in. Now, they can't get somebody in to do PAT testing just for a new bit of equipment, but they could have something like a PAT checker where they actually do that as a bit of a screening process. And we are finding that people are identifying a lot of counterfeit, particularly counterfeit IEC leads, by using something like a PAT checker. So that'll actually identify, that the cross-sectional area of the cables is low, so the resistance, the copper isn't pure, so you've got high resistance. Quite often you get a lot of high resistance or reverse polarity on counterfeit or substandard IEC leads, so you'll identify that with something like a prime test 50. Obviously, other things you get like half-sleeved earth pins and things, they'll be identified by using something like a prime test 50. Obviously, they'll be identified by visual inspection as well if you're doing it right. But that sort of thing is where they fit in. So a lot of companies are using them, maybe the IT department, when they're actually, building up a desk, they're putting leads in, they're doing these things. They do a quick check to make sure the leads are still okay and that the stuff's all okay when they install it. The other type of people who use it is maybe white goods installers. So somebody brings a fridge along or a washing machine. They take, it's been shipped around, it's been moved around on a van. They put it into position, and just before they connect it up, they do a quick check with something like a prime test 50. Similar is true for people using vending machines as well. So using vending machines, but selling vending machines, putting vending machines in place, installing them. They may well take them off the van and just as a final check before they leave it, just do a quick check on something like a prime test 50 PAT checker. So PAT checkers really do have an important role. They're not just the low-end PAT tester. They are actually a thing in their own right, and they do have a place. And I think there's a lot of people who are learning that and actually having that as part of their mix of products. So when they're doing their risk assessments, they're looking at enhanced visual inspections using PAT checkers. They're looking at how it actually all fits together and how it can be used as part of their risk management process. Mm-hmm. So always worth having a look at. Again, I think a lot of people look down on the products and sort of, it's not the same as an Apollo. Well, it's not designed to be. It's not meant to fit that niche. It's the right tool for the right job, and that is there. The other thing, and I would say this obviously representing Seaward, but with Seaward, these are quality PAT checkers, that they are actually doing the job. It is doing basically the same job as a normal PAT tester. The only difference is that you're getting a simple indication of pass-fail, where actually a lot of times people aren't necessarily getting that with other products, that are just on the market. Sometimes you assume they're doing the same test, but it can be very different, what actually goes into making the red light, green light style testers. So with Seaward, that you're actually getting a proper PAT tester from that side of things. Mm. So hopefully that's covered the question, Donovan. Do you get much questions about things like the prime test 50s and stuff on tech support?
Not a lot of questions about the prime test 50. People that are new to PAT testing, like you said, they do tend to use the lower end of the testers just to get up and started. But when they start going up in the prime test range, then some questions will come in: how to test leads, and what happens if I see open circuit or OC. They normally say. So not a lot of questions about them at all. They're fairly painless for people to use, and it's a plug and play basically.
I suppose, as we mentioned before, some of the questions you get is the old favourites of how do I turn it on?
How do I turn it on?
Press the two buttons down at once. That tends to be an old favourite that we always get with the prime tests, and once people get that, they're fine. But that is sometimes when people unbox it. Obviously, how do I turn it on? There isn't an on button, and the fact you have to press the class 1 and class 2 buttons at the same time to turn it on, I know that catches people out, and that's what we generally get a lot of.
That's right, and also the batteries. People expect that the batteries would be inside the tester, but they need to put it in. And so they're not too sure. And when you press the class 1 button, you get the battery symbol. So a lot of the time, that would be seen as I've got flat batteries, and they'd want to replace the batteries instead of pressing both the buttons. But it's something that's easily fixed.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. I think it's a cracking product, you know, our Prime Test 50. And for those who want the next step up again with the numerical values, the Prime Test 100 are really good selling products for us. And I think a lot of people are now recognizing where they fit in the range and how they can be used to actually, you know, accompany other PAT testers and fit in as part of a sort of overall process. So I think it is a good starting point for many people, but also people are seeing how they can fit those in. So what's next on the list, Donovan? What was the next question that you've got?
If you can talk to us about the new code of practice, when you're expecting that to come out, tell us more about it.
Yeah, certainly. I don't know when the last time was we spoke about this, and I think I've mentioned it quite a few times on other streams and things like that. But just to give you a bit of an update of where we're at, we've had confirmation now from the IET that it looks like a September publication date for the new 5th edition code of practice in the UK. Obviously, coronavirus has had a bit of a knock-on effect and you know, affected the publication dates and things like that. But we've had confirmation now from IET that they are aiming for a September publication date. Hopefully that will be best for everybody, because by that point, hopefully we're back up and running a bit, we're back at work, and we can actually you know, take advantage of these things and actually get the new standard in and adapt that, you know, be able to talk to customers and actually, you know, adapt that properly. What we didn't want is it come out in the middle of a lockdown or come out in the middle of, you know, supposedly the holiday season, although I don't think there'll be many people going abroad on holidays this time. So I think September's probably a good date for everybody, and fingers crossed it'll be getting there. Obviously, from a Seaward point of view, we'll be doing a lot more information about that as we get closer to the time, and obviously after the publication date. But it's an exciting change that's coming, really. There's quite a few extra things in there, and I think it's a good freshen up over the 4th edition of the Code of Practice. So yeah, watch this space. We'll have a lot more information as we get close to it, but just be aware of that when you're talking with your customers and things, that it does look like September is really when the new Code of Practice is going to be coming out, and that's when they need to start thinking about, you know, the changes to risk assessment and all of the things that come with that. So yeah, 5th edition, September, so keep an eye out. What's next, Donovan?
Good, thank you. And next on my list, something that some people do have issues with, but mainly I think the printers are fairly reliable. Are you able to talk us through what they can do, what labels they take?
Yeah, printing is something we get, you know, loads of questions about, and I talk about endlessly, and sometimes it does confuse people sometimes with the offering that we've got. I mean, in short, I'll just go through it a little bit, and I think in general as well, what, you know, a lot of times people think, well, why would I want a printer with a PAT tester? Why would I use a printer? I'm happy with a roll of sticky labels. What does the printing add over the top of that? And that's the confusion. So what we've got really is we've got two main printer offerings. We've got the Pro printer, which is a smaller, more affordable, more portable sort of size printer, very, very small, battery powered Bluetooth printer. And we've also got the Elite 2. The Elite 2 is the bigger, more industrial printer, still portable, you know, still got a belt clip. You can mount it on a belt and that sort of thing, but it's a lot more rugged. It's a lot more robust. It's designed to be used in a more industrial environment and you know, actually sort of stand up to a bit more rigorous drop testing and all that sort of thing. So really there's two offerings there. We have differentiated a little bit over the functionality. So the Pro printer is the standard printer. It uses the normal sort of white labels. We have two label sizes, the 1-inch labels or the 25mm labels, and the 3-inch, the 75mm labels. So that's pretty much standard. That's what's been in there. What we've added with the Elite 2 printer is we've actually added the new silvery type material labels, which are what's referred to as extra durable labels. And the reason we refer to those as extra durable labels is because they've got increased UV stability. They've got increased temperature stability. You may remember when I talk about UV stability, the fact that, you know, some labels, when they're left out in sunlight, they can fade. So when we've got nice hot weather like we've got now, the labels can fade over time, particularly if they're left in sort of windows or they're outside. Also, heat You know, you put a thermal label. These are thermal labels, and so they're direct thermal. So the way that they go black is by applying heat to them from the printhead. So there is no sort of ink or anything like that. You apply heat to it, and that's what makes it change colour. So if you take those labels and stick them on something like a laptop power supply, maybe that's going to get warm, the labels can go black. Whereas with the new extra durable labels that we've got, the silvery ones, that doesn't happen. The extra durable labels are also more chemically resistant. So sometimes people use cleaning solvents, particularly nowadays, you can imagine. We're using alcohol and things like that to clean everything down to kill coronavirus. So that can also affect other standard labels, whereas the extra durable labels are more resilient to that. It's always a trade-off. You know, no labels are ever 100% resilient on these things, but they are more rugged. That's why I referred to them as extra durable from that side of things. So with those, they're available for the Elite 2 printer, and we've actually got the two sizes in those as well, the 25mm and the 75mm. So going back to the original question is sort of why would we bother with printers in the first place? Yeah. Why can't we just use label printers or print them out ourselves or anything like that? Well, generally, the reasons people go for using the printers is speed from that side of things, and also it removes errors. So there's a lot of reasons that you go down that route. So one great thing with all of our labels is you can actually print the barcodes. So you can create a barcode label that's actually got the asset ID on for our particular asset that we're testing. So you haven't got to have a roll of barcode labels and you just use the next one and the next one, the next one. You can actually use the same number that you had last time, create a barcode for it. Now that's either a sort of 1D barcode, the normal traditional barcodes that you'd be used to seeing on, you know, goods in a supermarket or whatever. And also by using the Elite 2 printer with the Apollo 400, 500, we can actually do the QR codes as well now. So we've got the ability to do the Seaward QR codes. And the great thing with the Seaward QR codes is what we do with those is we can actually store a lot of information about the item in the QR code as well. So it's stored optically in the label. So what that means is that if you actually use the 2D barcode scanner and you scan with the Apollo, you actually scan the QR code, it actually knows automatically things like the site, the location, the asset description, what test sequence was done last time and all that sort of stuff. So it actually saves you having to do uploads, which is great. You know, you can still do uploads and there is still additional information there when you do an upload like pictures and things. But most of the data you need to be able to do a retest is stored already in the barcode. So you create the barcode, you scan it, either that's in the memory of the tester or it's picked up through the QR code, and that allows you to retest very, very quickly. So the barcode next time round by printing the labels actually works really, really quickly, and you can just scan it and away you go. So one of the reasons I say is the speed of retest, being able to actually print and scan those things in and scan the barcodes in. As I said, the other thing which I touched on there was being able to keep test history. So it's very, very important that we keep the numbering. So we should have history from an item from when we bought it all the way through to when it leaves service and we finally scrap it. We should have that traceability so we can show we've been maintaining that equipment over time. Now, if we just number everything from scratch every year, we've got no history. We've got no ability to prove that we've been maintaining that equipment over time. All we can say is, well, we tested it last year. You can't actually say that we've maintained that. Now, again, not everybody's going to have those systems, but really the perfect system that we should have is the same number maintained all the way through. Now, by having the ability to put those numbers in on the tester, either with a barcode scanner or manually, and then print it out, we can keep that number every time. Whereas when people are using pre-printed labels, they just generally bang, we just put a new number on everything and renumber everything from scratch, and we've just got no history. So if that particular piece of equipment's been playing up and it's failed 3 times, nobody's going to know that it's actually a history of failure. Nobody's going to know that that particular equipment is troublesome and that the risk assessment needs changing or it needs swapping out for new equipment. We've just got no history. And also your records then, it just shows, yeah, they were tested, but there's no traceability. So having the traceability there is important. The other thing with the label printing is actually, it saves you writing the labels out by hand if you're going to do it manually. So there is a time saving there. But how many times when people write things out by hand, do they get the number wrong, or they make a mistake, or their writing's illegible? So with the barcode scanning and the printing, you can actually print that out, and you'll get a sort of quality label there. On the 75mm labels, if you don't want the QR codes, you can actually have half the label to put your own logo on as well, or safety information. So you can also customize the labels to a certain degree and pick what options you want from there as well. So yeah, often people get confused with, why would I want a barcode scanner? Why would I want a printer? But actually, they're generally the reasons for doing it. There's a lot of reasons in there. And I would say to anybody who hasn't tried one recently, the general perception is, oh yeah, it's too slow, it's going to slow me down. But nowadays, with the drivers that we've got on there and the speed that they actually work at, generally, it probably isn't going to slow you down at all, because by the time you press the button and you've turned around and you're just connecting the equipment back up, the label's there, and you just stick it on and away you go. And actually, as I said, with the retest and the ability to keep test history, and also with the QR codes now, the ability to actually store the data in there. Now, what we've got for the QR codes as well, I'll just mention briefly, is we've actually got an app for scanning the QR codes. So what you can do, it's a free app that your customers can download. So if you've used Seaward QR codes, your customer can then actually scan the labels and actually see the test data. And if that piece of equipment moves, or it's scrapped, or it's damaged, they can actually just forward that in the form of an email, and it's got all that test data in there as well. So the QR codes actually allow you to offer extra services to your customers as well from that side of things. So yeah, really important extra features that we've got in there, and it's something that people really need to have another look at. If you're not already using those, it's definitely worth having a look at and actually seeing the savings that are in there. Sometimes people just look at the price per label and think, actually, yeah, it's very, it's really cheap to buy a big roll of labels and away we go. But actually, when you look at the whole cost and what you can actually do with that, it's not going to be right for everybody. But we are finding more and more people, since the introduction of the QR codes and things like that, more and more people are going back now to looking at label printing and actually saying, I think that might be worth having a look at. It's an investment. These printers aren't cheap, and like I say, the price per label is obviously more than you would pay if you were just buying a big reel of labels and just stickering all the things on. But actually, the value that you get there, the customization, the ability to actually keep the same numbers, produce barcodes. If you screw one up, you can print another one. If a label gets damaged, you can print another one. Whereas if you just got a big roll and they're just there, you've got to renumber it, or So I think the printing is something that I'd recommend people look at. Again, I'm guessing it's probably something that comes up a lot on tech support, Donovan, as well. You spend a lot of time talking to people about printers and barcode scanners.
Yes, printers, barcode scanners, how to connect the scanner. The printer connects a little bit easier than the barcode scanner, but if you know how to connect a barcode scanner, it will go first time as well. It's just about following the procedure that we have in place, and I think barcode scanners, people tend to miss the step where you need to scan the barcode. But after that,
I think that's my experience. Whenever I've had problems with it, we sit down, you go through the instructions line by line, bang, it's there.
It just goes.
And as you know well, generally you do it once when you first get the thing, you set it up, you almost never need to do it again. So it is just that little bit of setup time. And obviously we've got guides and things like that. And if you get really stuck, obviously we've got guys like Donovan there to talk you through it as well.
Yes, definitely.
So it's something, I think it's something that's worth a look at for anybody really to have another look at printing and scanning. If you haven't looked at it recently, some of the changes we've done and things like that, I think it's definitely worth reviewing. A lot of people are coming around to that idea, and it is picking up now. It seems to be people are getting more into it, just for the reasons that I mentioned on there.
Right. Also, another thing to add, to your printing. Is that it's important to know that if you're not running the latest version of firmware on your Apollo, you won't have the extra durable option there, and that's why it's important to update.
That's right. That was brought in with the Apollo Plus firmware. So it is important to make sure to get the latest features to actually check your firmware, and I think that's general good guidance anyway. And we'll probably cross over with it later on in this stream. I'm guessing it'll probably come up.
Moving on to our
With
next
that said,
question.
Donovan, what's next on the list?
Next question on the list is, I know we're getting to the, it looks like we're getting to the end of the lockdown, and it looks like things are starting
Fingers
to
crossed.
pick
Fingers
up
crossed
again.
rather than
Yes,
thumbs.
we're all
Yeah,
hopeful.
fingers crossed.
Get out of jail would be great. So people's testers have been in storage. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about how to store a tester, how to look after it.
Yeah, hopefully this was something we were hoping to have talked about in our last stream before that went wrong. Yeah, this is sort of for those of you who are still in lockdown, and you know what we were talking about really with this topic is the fact that chances are you might be working. Hopefully you are working. But if you're not working, now can be a good time really with your tester to actually just do some basic maintenance and make sure you look after it. So if you are going to not use your tester for a while, make sure, please, if you can take the batteries out of your normal, you know, your prime test testers where it's just AA batteries, take the batteries out. Don't leave them with the batteries in because you might potentially get corrosion, things like that. If you've got your Apollos, I would always disconnect the battery. So with the Apollo Pluses, that's nice and easy. You can disconnect, just there's like a little connector in there. It's easy to disconnect. With the non-Plus versions, the pre-Apollo Plus versions, you just need to disconnect the battery, and there's a little connector on the board to take that off. The batteries can get run down over time. Actually, they're very low self-discharge batteries. So I think they're supposed to maintain something daft like 80% of their value after 5 years or something like that. So they've got very low self-discharge. They've got very high internal resistance, very low self-discharge. So the problem is that if you leave them connected to the tester, there is a very small amount of current that goes out. And over time, obviously, that can run the batteries down to a point where the Apollo is not able to recharge them. And then you get into a situation where you either need to use another charger or you actually got to look at a new battery. So while you are getting some downtime with your tester, obviously make sure disconnect the batteries from that side of things. Now, other things to do while you're not using your tester is it's probably a good time to actually back up your settings or back up all your data. So take all your data off, back that all up onto PatGuard, get that off, create backups of that. Use the clone file function so you can actually generate a clone file. So if you go into the download functions, there's the ability in there to create a clone file. That clones all of your settings. It copies all your settings off the tester. So all your test sequences, all your user settings, all that sort of stuff. Copy that, save it somewhere nice and safe so you can always put it back on again afterwards if you need to. Do a factory reset, wipe your tester off, get a copy of the latest firmware from the Seaward website, which should be, I think, off the top of my head, Donovan, is version 406, is it? Am I correct on that?
Yep, you're right.
So go to the Seaward website, version 406, get the latest firmware, put that onto your tester, do another factory reset to make sure that it's settled, get that all in there, and then obviously put your clone files back on and you're up to date with the latest firmware. You've got all of your data there, you know, all of your settings there from your clone file ready to go. And we've got full instructions of how to do that on the website. So bit of spring clean on the tester. The testers always benefit from remove all the data, factory reset, new firmware, and put your clone files back on, get it all set up how you want it again. And also at this time, it's probably worth doing a bit of training as well. Just have a look at the tester, you know, start using some of the functions, have a look at our videos we've got on YouTube, have a look at the manual instructions, and really get to grips with how the tester works. Other things we've talked before probably about checkboxes. So you can always run a checkbox sequence. So use the checkbox, run a checkbox sequence, make sure that everything's working. Also check out your leads. The best way to check out your leads, obviously visually inspect your leads, but what you can do is connect them to the earth connection and run an earth continuity test and actually just measure the resistance of the leads. If the leads should be measuring really without any null or any zeroing on, they should be measuring 0.0 something. So 0.0-ish, somewhere in that bracket, 0.0 something is normally about right, maybe a little bit more than that. But if it's getting into like 0.2, 0.3, what you tend to find is that the leads are wearing, the terminals are wearing, things like that. It's probably worth investing in some new leads and doing that. Obviously, you can zero resistance, but really if the leads are reading a little bit high, it's probably time to invest in a new set of leads from that side of things. So really good time to do some spring cleaning with your tester. Obviously, if you do need to clean it, we always say a dry cloth or whatever, just give the thing a wipe over and make sure that it's all nice and clean and kept neat, clean it, give the screen a wipe and stuff like that. So from that side of things, just get your tester, give it a quick spruce up, make sure you put it away, remove your batteries, get it there all ready so that when you go back to work, it's there and you don't suddenly have it falling over when you want to go back to work. You get your first job, you think, great, I'm going back to work, and you have to disappoint the customer because the tester's not there, it has to be sent away, or you have to wait while you get more leads or another battery or things like that. Now's the time to go through, put the effort in, put the time in while you're not relying on the tester, and hopefully then you can pick that up and really get back to using that and back into the process of work, hopefully painlessly and no problems. And if you do need any help with that, obviously Donovan's available, I'm available. We can always talk you through any of the processes that we've talked about there. But now is probably a good time. We always put off doing anything with the tester. You think, oh, well, I'll do that again, I'll do it. But now, if you've got a bit of time, you've got a bit of leeway, then hopefully we can get back into that. So that when the lockdown does finally end and the work starts coming back, then we can get back into it from that side of things. So hopefully, Donovan, have you got many questions from people about sort of storing the testers and things like that come through on tech support?
I had one interesting question. It was about how to disinfect the tester.
Oh, right.
So obviously they don't want to use a dry cloth. They want to use some sort of disinfectant on the keypad itself, just to make sure that's clean.
Yeah.
So I just said a light spray won't do any damage, but take it easy on the spraying.
Yeah, I think that's the side of things really. Obviously, if people use alcohol wipes and stuff like that too much, it can end up removing the printing and removing the design off the keypads and all that sort of thing. And obviously we don't want any moisture getting down inside the tester, but generally using some sort of alcohol wipe or the sort of screen wipe things that you'd use, or alcohol wipes, I think you can probably get away with using that. Obviously currently people are concerned about how to do that and things. I've also seen what people tend to do sometimes is put put a bag over the keyboard or something like that. Obviously you've got to be careful with the ventilation with the tester at the top and stuff, but sometimes I've seen people actually put like a bag over the keyboard and stuff, so it's actually they're not directly pressing on the keys. The other thing is use gloves as well is a good idea, and obviously make sure that your hands are clean and things like that as well. But no, I can understand that's a good question actually nowadays in time. Maybe we should issue some guidance of disinfecting your testers and what you can get away with using from that side of things. But that's an interesting and relevant topic. Maybe that's one of the ones we should include on the next session we're doing, maybe as a little bit of a guide, or maybe sounds like a video that we could do on there, maybe from that side of things. Might be a good one.
Definitely.
Have we got any questions? I think we had a couple of questions came through via Facebook, didn't we, Donovan?
There was.
I'm just rapidly checking Facebook again to see if there's any stuff on here that's anybody's posted any questions while we've actually been doing the sessions.
There was a question about the firmware.
Ah, right. Yes, I can see that. We had a question from Ben. That's the question from Ben.
Ben Morrison, yes.
Yeah, so Ben's asked, is there going to be any firmware updates to prevent site location details reverting back to the previous day's job if the machine powers down for any reasons? Yeah, this is something we've looked at and we were struggling to replicate it. It doesn't happen a lot, but it is something we've heard about where people have found that they've turned the tester off and it's actually gone back to the settings, the site and location that you were working on the previous day. I have had the engineers look into it. We've tried to actually identify why it happens and what happens with that. Best thing we could think of was that the tester was being shut off mid-sequence, but it looks like they are actually storing the values. But we have had this not just from Ben, but we have had this from a couple of other customers as well. So there does obviously appear to be something there. Yeah, the intention for a firmware update is we'll probably be doing the next firmware update to align with September when the 5th edition Code of Practice comes out. So we'll pick up those bugs then. What I can say is obviously make us aware of those, make sure you keep those in our minds, because we do get feedback from people, and you know, it might be 6 months before we do the next firmware update, and we try and record all the ones we can, but obviously there is odd things that we do forget about or do get missed off the list. So always keep in touch with us. You can get in touch with us via support@seaward.com is probably a good way to actually get in touch with us from a support point of view. But obviously, get in touch with me personally if you want to from that side of things, or Donovan, and just make sure that you keep us reminded of these things. We are human, and sometimes things do get missed out. But that one's definitely on the list of stuff, and we did have the engineers do a quick investigation, but it was something that didn't immediately spring out of why it was happening. There seemed to be some strange circumstances going on with that one, so we've got to have a look in that and just see what's actually triggering that, why it's reverting back, and yeah, there's obviously something going on. It's not not made up. And I think Nathan's saying he's had it there on his on the chat, saying that he's had it there on his cases. Have you had that through tech support, Donovan? Is that something that's crossed your bows?
Not at all, but I'll give it a try on my tester and see if I can pull up the same.
Yeah, we were struggling. It's one of the ones we were struggling to replicate really from that side of things. He didn't do it every time, and there must be something that's going on. I know when I spoke to the engineers that they were trying to say, well, as you know, is it shut down part way through, or is it that it's turned on, it's gone? It's surprising the complexity of some of these things. You think, yeah, it's there, we just do this, but then it's actually looking at the sequence of the memories and what version of firmwares, and there's all sorts of complexities in there. But it is something we need to look at, and obviously if we've got people who are experiencing this, then that's great, because we can use you as testers and actually see that we've tried to replicate it. But what I've always said with these things, if you do get these things and anything pops up like messages, or you can send us pictures, screenshots, whatever, clone files, anything that helps us get to the bottom of it, because obviously at the end of the day we don't want bugs in testers. We want these things fixed, we want these things improved, and obviously just let us know as much as you can from that side of things. So I think there was also a question on here, Donovan, am I right in saying, yes, from Max as well?
From Max, I think he wanted to know about the test sequences. Is there a way to put them on the tester without actually programming them in on the tester itself?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I read it. I'll answer that one. I'll answer another one as well. I read it slightly differently on there, where he got a lot of data on there, and he was looking at getting that up, but I'm not sure. So yeah, if you've got a lot of test sequences on the tester, I talked about this earlier. Clone files. So clone files is generally the way to actually save your test settings. So if you create a clone file on the tester, that saves all your test settings. Unfortunately, there's not an easy way to create sequences off the tester and then put those on. You do have to type the sequences into the tester. Usually you can copy an existing sequence and just add to it and alter it. So it's usually not too bad to do that way around, but unfortunately we haven't got a utility where you can create sequences off the tester. But when you've got them on there, you can actually clone those, store those off, and then you can upload those back onto another tester, or if you have a fault or whatever, you can upload those back on again from that side of things. So being able to do that is quite important. The other question, I wasn't sure whether on his question, where he was asking whether there was an easy way to yeah, so we have 40 plus tests in there. Yeah, I think probably that is what he's asking actually from that side of things. Is there an easy way? Yeah, unfortunately, there's not an easy way to create the sequences off, but once you've created them, create a clone file. Clone files are really great for that. Create a clone file, and then those things can come back up and actually do it that way round. I don't know if there's any other questions that we've had off anybody. I haven't seen anything that's popped in on social media or anything while I've been doing the stream. So what I'll do, I'll just address the ones we've got in the chat window, the ones that we've got from Nathan on there. Yeah, good email. Good to see a message from Chris there saying thanks to Donovan for sorting out his PAT guard today. So obviously that's a good relevant one. There's some good feedback, Donovan. I know we always get brilliant feedback for your interactions with customers, but obviously that's good to see one there that's actually current from today. So yeah, you must have been dealing with Chris earlier on.
Him and many more.
Yeah, we just on that, we always do like to get customer feedback. With all the emails we send out from tech support, there's a little survey on the bottom. Yes. So if you do get, good or bad service, we're open to any feedback really from that side of things. But if you do get usually good service, excellent service from tech support, we always love people to go in and just record in the little survey how their experience was, so we can obviously make those things better. We also try and record as well the nature of a lot of the service requests, so we can actually feed that back in and try and make improvements as well from that side of things. So yeah, Nathan's just asked on here a few details about the 5th edition code of practice and what's likely to change on there. I've talked about this a little bit in the past, and obviously I don't want to sort of preempt too much content that'll be coming up later on, because if we start too soon, everybody will be bored to tears about the 5th edition, so I don't want to go into too much in there. But the main change, the main headline change, is that the table 7.1, the frequencies table, is going, and that's just going to be replaced with risk assessment. So there will be risk assessments, there'll be example risk assessments, and there'll be more content about how to do risk assessments. But the actual table 7.1, the table of frequencies that everybody's always gone to and sort of looked up on there, is gone. Now, the logic behind that was that the legal duty was to do a risk assessment, but what people were doing is, I'm not doing a risk assessment, I'm just going to look on the table and say, yeah, the table says that. Now, that table may not apply specifically to your environment, it may not apply specifically to the equipment. And what people were doing was they were forgetting that on the table it says you've got to do a user check every so often. You've got to do you've got to do a formal visual inspection every so often, and then you can do the combined inspection and test. What people were doing is going combined inspection and test. So where it might have said you need to do a user check every week, formal visual every 6 months, combined inspection and test every 2 years, they're just going, oh, well, I'll just do combined inspection and test every 2 years. I won't do any user checks, I won't do any formal visuals, but I'll just go for that one. So people were misinterpreting the table. So we were looking to change the table, but the problem is with changing the table is how complex do you go? You can end up actually making the table too complex. So trying to include every scenario. And also, who's to say that what's in that IET table is right? Because at the end of the day, when we looked at some of the data, there was things in there like class 2 equipment where it said just don't test. But one of the committee members actually brought a load of data and said, look, here's 11,000 failures for that type of item. So we find 11,000 failures for the type of item that the code of practice was currently saying don't even test. So it was obvious that it wasn't really ever going to be fit for purpose to try and do a table that covered everything. The other option is to simplify it right down, go back to something like, yeah, we just test everything every 12 months. But again, that isn't right for high risk items. It's too quick for low risk items. So again, the guidance just wasn't really there. So the idea was to say, look, the original intention was we were going to do risk assessments. The legal duty is we do risk assessments. So let's get back to risk assessments. Let's do good risk assessments. Let's let the duty holders do the risk assessments and actually look at the high risk items, the low risk items, and make it fit for purpose. So yeah, the main change with the 5th edition is going to be bigger emphasis again, back on risk assessments. They're removing the safety blanket of the table. There's a lot of people saying, oh, I'm not very sure about that. We like having a table. And a lot of people do like having a table because it's a safety blanket. They just go, well, a table says. But actually, when you drill down into that, is it actually fit for purpose? Is it actually managing risk? Is it actually managing health and safety? Or is it just nice because somebody can go, I like that number out the table? So really, I'm quite positive about it. Obviously, we'll be doing a lot of risk assessment content. It fits in really with what the Apollo offers anyway, because the Apollo gives you the ability to do risk assessments and things in there anyway. So the Apollo already fits around that and supports that. There's going to be a few other terminology changes, things like that. Portable, movable, handheld, stationary, all that's going. It's all just electrical equipment. So all of the sort of made up categories and things are just gone. Even the word appliance is gone, because appliance actually applies to, no pun intended, appliance applies to domestic appliances. Under the actual international electrotechnical vocabulary, the word appliance is just used in a domestic context. So it doesn't really cover industrial equipment used in the place of work. So we just talk about equipment now. So really, from a portable appliance testing bit, the only bit that's left now is testing. So the code of practice has always been in service inspection testing of electrical equipment. That's what we talk about. There's some extra guidance in there for rack-mounted equipment. There's quite a few bits of changes in there. Nothing that's going to affect the industry too badly. There's a few things we need to get to grips with a bit of new terminology and stuff, but nothing that's actually going to night and day change things. Obviously, from a Seaward point of view, we're probably going to look at some new test sequences, maybe some little tweaks to the firmware to better align with what's going on, but we'll talk about those as we get close to the day. But really keep an eye on us. We'll keep you up to date with the content and really any 5th edition changes you need to be aware of. Close to the date, hopefully by then we'll be able to do more road shows and things like that again, and we'll be out of lockdown and we can give you a lot more content, but we'll do that closer to the time really from that side of things. So hopefully that's answered that for you there. So yeah, Nathan's just put down there a little bit about the actual that error that we talked about, that it actually seems to happen when the machine switches off automatically or in a crash. Yeah, I think potentially there is something where the data's not being refreshed or it's not actually getting to the point where, because in theory, talking to the engineers at the end of the test sequence when we save the results, that's basically when it puts it in the memory. So the only time it shouldn't memorize that and default back to anything else is if we haven't got all the way through that process. But I don't know why it seems to go back to the previous day's results. That just seems strange. It should be the previous sequence, or if you've done a complete sequence, it should store it. So obviously something there. So I don't know if there's any other questions anybody's got. Any viewers still there? Is there anybody still out there watching? I think I'll take it as a win as we managed to get through this far, and obviously we'll be able to keep that there. Anything you want to add, Donovan, from that side of things?
Not really from my side. I think some of the questions that I've had in the recent days was I've had a lot of new PAT testers come on, so I get a lot of questions regarding new PAT testing, and the ones that buy the start off on an Apollo straight away. I'm really not sure about all the test sequences and what to choose. So they always want me to explain what the different test sequences do. But
I think it is something, and I've always been tempted really to reduce the number of test sequences. I think we put about 26 test sequences in there, and a lot of it is the same thing over and over again. There's not much difference. I'm hoping with the 5th edition, and when we do that, it will be able to revisit those and make it a lot clearer, because there won't be so much differences in there. There won't be so many different, portable, handheld, movable, all those sort of differences. A lot of the test sequences will come together, and we hopefully will be able to align those a lot better. Also, one thing I would recommend for the Apollo with new users is having a look at the novice mode. Novice mode's always worth that, because it does put a few more instructions in and stuff to do in the first place. So yeah, it might annoy people who are familiar with PAT testing where there's too many messages and things popping up, but for people who are new, obviously have a look at that on your user account and tick the novice mode box instead of expert, and that sometimes helps people get into those. But yeah, certainly test sequences can be a bit daunting, and most people will probably admit they probably use about 3 or 4 of them. So again, I think that's something we can do more on. Obviously, there is a breakdown. I think the breakdown is in the user manual as well. So in the actual the manual for the Apollo, there's a breakdown of what's included in all those test sequences. So I always try and recommend people read the manual, but it's not exactly great bedtime reading, but it is worth having a look for the test sequences from that side of things. Nathan's just come up with a question there about with AV hire companies, obviously risk-based, but is annual testing sufficient? It's a difficult one with AV hire because, again, it depends on the hire regime. I know a lot of people do pre and post hire, so they'll actually test it, they'll leave it on the shelf, and then they'll just check it when it's kitted up to go out. So they're checking it before it's hired out. And then maybe they'll just do a visual check when it comes back in, just to make sure it's there and it's working. Some people actually check before it goes out and when it comes back. Sometimes people just do it before it goes out, because they don't know how long it's going to sit on the shelf. So again, it does come down to the hire companies to actually work out a risk assessment for that. The other thing that's important to cover as well with the policies and the hire agreements is when they are being hired, who's responsible for it while it's on hire? Is that included as part of the hire package? So if it's on hire for an extended period of time, maybe, I don't know, over a week or whatever it says in the code of practice, then really does that become the responsibility of the duty holder? So the duty holder of the company who's hired it, do they need to make sure it's tested? Or does the hire company actually make sure that they send somebody out to site after they've been there for a certain period of time? Or do they do a hire rotation where things are brought back in and a new one sent out after a period of time? Again, hire is a problem really, and I've always advised hire companies to look at it from a terms and conditions point of view, detail what they do in their terms and conditions, have a policy, have a risk assessment, look at it on the type of equipment, because some types of equipment are going to be higher risk than others. So again, you know, things are going to be more accessible than others. You know, if you've got a speaker that's up in the air somewhere, the chance of somebody getting electric shock off it is pretty slim. You're more worried about it probably falling on somebody. Whereas if you've got a cable run across the ground that people are walking over all the time, maybe in the mud, again, that's probably going to be higher risk. So we might need to address that differently. So from an AV hire point of view, just blanket annual testing for everything probably isn't good enough. It needs to be individually risk assessed, look at the hire intervals, look at the hire periods, what type of equipment is it, and really get into that and get a proper policy in place, and also make sure that's reflected in the hire terms and conditions and the hire agreement, so that everybody, the hirer and the hiree, for want of a better term, know their responsibilities and who's responsible for testing. Can be difficult, that one, because it's trying to get that sort of nailed down really, and yeah, can be a difficult process, but that's what the risk assessment's there for, to cover everybody. Anything else popped up, Donovan, or are we going to call that away for now?
Like we've run the course.
Well, the internet's lasted. Obviously, you plugging a cable in has worked, and we'll remember that one for next time.
Yeah. Future-proofed it now.
And apologies for anybody who dropped through. Obviously, we'll send a link out to this video and that side of things. You can connect with us, obviously, if you want to get in touch with us afterwards. You know, the session doesn't end here. You can get in touch with us anytime. Generally, the best way to contact us is via support@seaward.com. That'll come through to Donovan, and we'll be able to support you from there. Obviously, connect with us on social media, follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, get in touch with us. We always love to talk to customers and really interact with customers. The more, the better. The closer we get to the customers, the better we are able to, you know, to improve things for you and you know, make the testers even better. We like to think we've got the best offering that's out there, but we know we can do even better, really, and that's what we try and do every day for you. So from that side of things, thank you very much for your time. I'll call it quits, and bye from me and Donovan.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.